So I am not at school today. However, you are still going to have a regular lesson and you're going to complete a regular assignment on formative. What I need for you to do is watch this video, take notes in your journal. Your title will be Imperfect Proportions. And I call them imperfect proportions, not because they're not proportional, because they absolutely are, but because they are going to give us ugly math. It's not going to be pretty math without decimals. You will be required to turn in your work. You will be required to show your work the same way that we showed our work on perfect proportions. You'll need your doodle work section as well as your proportion and your equation with all of the steps showing that you have solved it. So make sure that you turn in your work for yesterday's work as well as today's work into the folder before you leave. On formative, I have chosen 5 problems out of, I believe it's 12 that are on the worksheet. You're only completing the ones that have the blue dots. So let's look at what happens here. You'll see I have my paper set up with doodle work and the skeleton of my proportion. If you need to pause this video so that you can set up your page in your journal, please do so. All right, so let's read this problem. We're going to set it up exactly like we have done with regular proportions. It says that if 5 bags of mulch covers 32 square feet, how many square feet could 16 bags cover? So the important information from here that you need to write in your journal is 5 bags of mulch covers 32 square feet. How many feet could 16 bags cover? So we'll leave off just a couple of words, not a whole lot. Again, if you need to pause so that you can write that information down, do so. So when I look at this, I think about, okay, my labeling ratio, I need to write what things I'm comparing. Well, I'm comparing these bags of mulch and the feet, the square feet that it's going to cover. So those are going to be my labels. So I'm going to write mine as bags to feet. My given ratio says that there are 5 bags for 32 square feet. So this is a 5 to 32 ratio. And then I need to figure out how many feet, so I know my feet is going to have the X, could 16 bags cover. All right, so the next thing that I need to take care of is I need to write my equation. And just like before, I'm going to multiply diagonally. So it would be 5x is equal to 32 times 16. So over in my doodle work, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work out 32 times 16. This would be 12, 19, 0, 2, 3. So when I actually finish with this and I add these together, I should get, let's see here, make sure I'm doing my math right. I don't want to leave you wrong. This would be 2, this would be 1, 512. So 5x then equals 512. So far, so good. This is exactly like what we did before. No problems. I know that I'm going to have to divide both sides of my equation by 5 because I'm using cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to take that 512 and set up my division. 5 goes into 5 one time. 0, bring down this 1. Uh-oh, this is where kids sometimes have issues. This 1 divided by 5 is a 0, so I have to write this all out. Now I'm going to bring down my 2. 12 divided by 5 would be 2. I've got 2 left over, so here's where I add my decimal point and a 0. So then I get 20 divided by 5, which I'm a little out of space, so I'm going to put up here, would go in 4 times. You guys have done division with decimals, so this shouldn't be a problem. So we end up with 102.4. These 5s cancel out, and we get 102.4 as our solution. You'll see my work is shown exactly like it was with perfect proportions. We just ended up with a decimal answer. Not pretty math. So let's look at another problem here. Let's pick out the important information so that way you have context in your notes for the problem. It says that an airplane boards 16 people every 3 minutes. How long would it take to board all 150 passengers? So the important information here that you would need to write down, 16 people every 3 minutes. How long for all 150 passengers? Again, if you need to pause so you can write, please do so. When I look at this problem and I'm trying to figure out what things I'm comparing the minutes to the passengers. So I'm going to write this as minutes to passengers. And I'm going to be careful because the way that I set this up, I've got to make sure I get my labeling ratio right. This is going to board 16 people. So those are the passengers. So I'm putting that in the bottom of my proportions. Remember, you have to keep everything organized. Every 3 minutes. So the 3 minutes goes with the minutes. How long to board all 150 passengers? So here's our 150. So we're figuring out the time. That's why it says how long. So now that I have my proportion set up, I can write my equation. So cross multiply 16 times x is equal to 3 times 150. So I'm going to come over to my doodle work. I'm going to do my 150 times 3, which gives me 450. So the next line of my equation, 16x equals 450. And then I've got to come over here and I'm going to do my division. So 450 divided by 16, this is going to give us a decimal. I can tell you that right now. I'm going to do twice. 2 times 16 is 32. Subtract, this would be 3, this would be 1, so I get 130. I believe it goes in 8 times. This would be 48, 128. Subtract and we get 2. So then I've got to add a decimal and a 0 and bring that down. 20 divided by 16. Make sure I get my decimal up here. Would be 1. Subtract and I have 4 left. So let me bring this down. That's going to go in twice. 2 times 16 is 32. So I subtract and get 8. So I'm going to come up here, 8, and I have to add another 0. 80 then divided by 16 is 5. And 5 times 16 is 80. So we are dividing both sides of the equation by 16. X equals 28.125. On your assignment today, there's 5 problems. Like I said, I eliminated a whole bunch of them. You only need to do the 5 that I have marked. And you will not get any decimals that do not end. Everything will come to an end. There's no repeating decimals. There's no non-terminating decimals. Everything wraps up. And actually, on some of your answers, you won't have a decimal. Some do, some don't. I will see you all on Monday. Behave for Miss Sexton, please.